Hit it. Oh, how you feel, brother?
Feeling good.
You feel good?
Feeling good. It's groovy.
Ain't so much bone, brother. How you feel, man?
I feel all right.
I call your name. I don't want no people to know you're in here. How you feel, fella? Hey, yeah. Sure getting down. Gotta take you higher. Ow. All right. You wanna do it again? You wanna do it again, huh?
Yeah, let's go on back.
Gotta take you high.
Jay, and I am so excited, like always, about the show today. For one, because I have one of my main mentors. When I moved to Los Angeles back in 1988, I moved here, I knew absolutely no one. And when I say no one, I mean no one. I moved here as a young mom with 2 sons. I knew a great aunt that I had met only once, and she had a duplex that had been sitting empty. And she found out through my mom that I was wanting to move to Los Angeles, California. And she said, okay, if you decide to move there, I'll let you move into my duplex for 6 months without rent and you can go. So that's the beginning of the story of me coming to Los Angeles, California, and my mentor who is here with me today, Peter Bostic. But before I bring my guest on, I want to talk about a couple of things. First of all, many people have emailed me from the last show and they wanted me to repeat how can they start receiving the free grant information that we send out weekly. You can go to our website at kifoundation.org. That's kifoundation.org, and click on the tab that says Free Grant Info. That's where we send out not only free grant information, but tips about whether you're trying to start your business or your nonprofit, how do you work in community, and just other things that are going on whenever I'm speaking, wherever I'm speaking at, whether it's here in the country or whatever. You'll know that kind of information. Plus, there's a couple of conferences coming up. Now, this conference, I'm talking to those that are African American at this time. I know my audience is broad, but there's a conference called the Power Networking Conference. And it is focused on African Americans in business, entrepreneurs, and those that are just wanting to make a difference in their community. If you would like to know about the Power Networking Conference, it is coming up in June. I think it's the 23rd through the 26th. You can go to my other website, which is SheritaHerring.com. That's SheritaHerring.com, and click on PNC Conference. That's Power Networking Conference. That's where individuals from all over the country, entrepreneurs, that whether you're a realtor, childcare, wanting to go into technology, they're coming together from all over the country and doing some major things. It is truly a movement that is led by the great George Fraser, and that's Fraser, George Fraser. Look him up because he's doing some amazing things, creating a movement across the country for African Americans that want to do more than just have a job. If you're wanting to make a difference, wanting to grow your business, wanting to leave a legacy for the people that you love and trust, then you want to come and get connected at the Power Networking Conference. Okay? So again, this is Sherita J. I want to welcome you for being here with me today, and I want to introduce you now to my very special guest, Mr. Peter Bostic. Pete, how are you?
I'm doing quite well. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yeah. I'm really glad to connect with Pete because, like I started saying, Peter, he didn't know how much of a mentor that he was going to become for me. When I first moved here back in '88, I moved here on July 19th, 1988, Pete, and it was November 1st when I started at the Weingart YMCA in South Central Los Angeles, and you were one of the first directors that I met after I interviewed with Leroy Titus. And I just remember the presence that you had, whether it was with the toddlers. I mean, they knew Mr. Bostic and they would speak, and even the adult basketball program, because I think we had the largest 35 and older league.
We sure did. People would come from all over the county playing in 35 and up. I was playing in it myself.
Yeah, but you were instrumental in making that and bringing on the people to make that happen. So, Pete, I just kind of want to get started on how did you get started in the nonprofit arena, because you're such an advocate?
Well, you know, you really aren't exposed to nonprofit going through school. I was just through the March of Dimes campaigns, and I can remember bringing home the little sheet of paper and you had to fill in quarters.
Yeah,
I remember that. I liked doing that.
Yeah.
So in a way, I guess early on I had that feeling, but that's because I was born into a nonprofit. Both my parents, I had a black and white parent. They were it was an interracial affair, and so they chose, instead of to abort me and not give me life, they chose to give me up to a Catholic Home Bureau in New York, a nonprofit. So I was born into the nonprofit, and I felt that was a blessing, and that I needed to continue to give back to others because that's a gift of life. And so I've always had that positive perspective.
Yeah. Well, and your perspective on that is so different than a lot of young people but like I've dealt with a lot of programs that deal in the foster care, and many of their stories are not the same. And
I was very lucky. I got adopted early in life. Many foster care children go from home to home or from family to family temporarily. They don't get that family bond that I was able to have.
Yeah.
Even though I'm a go-back, I was brought back. First, I was adopted by a different family.
Would say a go back.
And they brought me back because my first job was in the grocery business at Vons, and where you had to do go backs.
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, that's what I was." Now, Sherita, you've known me for a while. Why do you think, as a baby, I would get adopted by someone who was an interracial family? So the nun was very excited. She said, "Well, I have the perfect child for you. Why do you think they brought me back, Sherita?"
How old were you?
I was like 2. I didn't even have an attitude yet. I don't think I got an attitude until I was 5. Why do you think they would bring me back?
Well, it could be, Pete, that maybe that couple was going through something at the time.
Okay, this is a very positive attitude.
Yeah.
Actually, the nun told me my ears, which you can look at my ears now, my ears started turning too dark.
You are kidding.
Brought me back, yes. And that has helped me have an understanding for how silly race is. Because, come on, you got to be kidding me. But that was a blessing because the Bostics, who were looking for a male boy, they already had 2 daughters.
Yes.
They wanted a male. They came and they saw me and they zapped me up. And then because of aerospace, my father was recruited to the West Coast. So we did Route 66, and when I was 4, I've been in California ever since.
Oh my God! So see, everything that was just a storm leading up to the beautiful rainbow.
Exactly. You
because
have to go through that sometimes.
yeah. Because I know that later on we're going to get into the history of your family and your father, and I was blown away just with the resume that you showed me. But I brought you. Oh my goodness!
That's nice sound.
Boy, I tell you, that's yes, it
always
is.
Good music when you're around Sherita.
That I should have silenced my phone. Let me make sure and turn this down. The thing is that Peter. See, my business now, Pete, is I have a grant writing firm. I train nonprofits. I do board development and corporate governance. And that is solely because of you and Leroy Titus, and I would say even Paul Stewart.
Yes.
Because I watched the 3 of you run the most magnificent YMCA in South Central Los Angeles. And now, community had always been in my blood. I mean, from 5 years old, they always say that what you love and who you are starts showing up by the time you're 5. And even as a kid, even if in school, if there was a girl that was teased about because she stank, they called her the pee-pee girl. That's the pee-pee girl I want to take home, and my mom would want to comb her hair or, help her do better. That's the kind of family I'm from. And when I moved to Los Angeles, not knowing anyone, and came to that YMCA and saw that, and you made this statement recently when we got back connected, that nonprofit and being who we are, it's not a job, it's a lifestyle.
Yes.
And you guys live that every day. And you gave my boys, the positive male role models, what they needed. And so I just really admire that about you. So Pete, you were very good at fundraising and tapping into the heartstrings of people to make them want to give. Where did that come from?
Well, I think, sincerity, you can't play with donors. I've been very transparent with donors. When you deliver a mission, donors want to know it's being delivered, and if you talk sincerely about it, I think that resonates with them. But the style of delivery came from the same mentor you mentioned. Leroy Titus was also my mentor as well. So even though I was able to mentor you to some degree, it's only because I already had 6 years under Leroy Titus as
Yeah.
bus supervisor.
Yeah.
And not only did I learn a heck of a lot from him as an individual, as a male, as an executive director, but he spent a lot of the budget on training his staff and things that he couldn't teach you.
Yes.
You learn through the YMCA of USA or University Associates or other kinds. He was always sending his people to training, and I learned how important training is. So many companies to this day, they do not put emphasis in training, and they let employees falter by trial and error and get discouraged. I was at an open house yesterday. I had my new opportunity listening to a lady who wanted to be a teacher. They threw her in the classroom with no training, and the students were so rough with her because she didn't know how to handle them. She quit. Now, she might have been a good teacher with some training. And so Leroy Titus was an excellent trainer himself, but the fact that he put money where his mouth was and sent his staff to trainings is why I was able to give you some mentoring, because he certainly took care of that for me.
Well, you know, again, I had never done fundraising, and I knew nothing about grant writing, but because all of us that were over departments, he made it mandatory that we learn that piece.
Yeah, cross-training.
Yes. And that's what really threw me into this arena, because I liked it so much. And if you mean I can do this and help programs be able to survive? And so I've been very grateful about that. So, Pete,
that training there, one thing he taught us that I see so many businesses, profit or non-profit, don't do. When we took a lot of years to build the Weingart Urban Center on Central Vermont. But the month that we opened, because there were successful YMCAs in the LA area at the time, they had 23 branches, then the staff from Downey, the staff from Westside, the staff from Torrance was at our facility working with all the comparable staff at their level, so that the transition as we opened had all these veterans around us. Why don't other companies do that? They let you start your business, open it up on your own, and you repeat the same errors as opposed to bringing in experienced people to help you. So that's just another principle that I learned through the why, how important it is to bring in veterans when you're starting things.
Yeah, bringing in veterans and just looking at the other organizations that you can work with in community, which was my first, again, exposure to collaboration. You know, so many organizations want to be that standalone, or so many small businesses, when they start, they don't want to bring in other skill sets that they may need, and then they wonder why within the first 5 years they're defunct. They no longer exist. And so, Pete, I want to talk about your parents, because you just blew me away with that resume. What were your parents like?
Well, I had some very unique, the Bostics who ended up adopting me were both individually extremely unique, strong people on their own. My father, New York had a great education and public system. They went through the public system there, but had great skill set. So my father, after he went to the Coast Guard, was recruited, since he was an engineer, to come to help the West Coast as the aerospace venture was on. And he wrote the original software for the first Apollo capsule, and he was selling computers that were bigger than the room that we're in right now, way ahead of his time. And he was always pressing the envelope. He moved us into the Windsor Hills area, Windsor district off of Olympic and Crenshaw, which had been redlined to not have African Americans move north of Olympic Boulevard. So that's where he put us. And parents, neighbors were protesting us, and my parents kind of shielded me from that, but he wanted me to have an experience in a multicultural environment so that my exposure would be broad. And so when I went to John Burroughs, I did have a different experience because of the student body there. But I'll tell you the kind of learnings that took place at John Burroughs that still stay with me today. And busing had just started around that time. So even though I lived in this zip code here, the 90019, John Burroughs was receiving students from different communities, and it was a different culture shock. So, but at recess and at lunch, usually all the African American males, we're out on the yard playing basketball, playing football, working on our skills.
Uh-huh.
A lot of the students that were there that weren't being bused, at lunchtime, they were in the classroom looking at their stock. Yes, parents were giving them stock for Christmas. And they took their afternoons doing financial investments
So they're
in junior
already
high school.
Financial literacy is always just a part of their
It was
day
part
to
of
day.
their culture. Their businesses were already being funded. So when they went to college or they got a law degree, their business opened. They had an office. They already knew that at junior high. Well, we're picking up flags, trying to get your flag. And so we used to call them names. Because they're in the class.
Because they were in the classroom.
During lunch. We thought they were idiots. Who's the idiot at the end? But it shows you that if you have parents that are exposing you to economic development early in life, that are exposing you internationally early in life,
right.
then it's much easier to succeed. And what I saw was us as African Americans, the achievement gap kept getting bigger and bigger because you want to be Magic. You want to be Michael Jordan. You want to be Shaq.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that, again, it's so important to teach financial literacy. Pete, right now, you're starting pretty soon at the Comprehensive Child Development Facility. Is it a center? Is it a foundation?
It's a nonprofit that has a focus on child development, but it serves families as well.
Okay.
So even though most of the programs are child development, they have 3 centers in Long Beach, 1 in Wilmington, and 2 in San Pedro. They also provide job training for parents so that they can increase their income level.
Okay.
I'm really excited to see, I think that area can get beefed up because, recession supposedly is over.
Yeah.
And yet there's still a lot of people making low wages.
Yes.
And we need to get parents into jobs that are going to increase their wages so that they don't need subsidy for child care. So I'm very excited about this new opportunity because it allows me to strengthen Long Beach as well as Los Angeles at the same time.
Yeah. Well, now, Pete, I know that this is a new position, and we're talking about financial literacy and the importance of learning that. If an organization, and even the one that you're starting, because what I like to do is have this show as a teaching component. If someone is wanting to, let's say, start a financial literacy program, what are some of the steps when someone wants to do a very new program? It doesn't exist yet with their organization.
In terms of charitable fundraising, is that?
Whether it's charitable or even to start program development. What are some of the steps? Because I know that I learned program development from you. I learned what are going to be your deliverables? How are you going to evaluate the program? Those are things that sitting in was that Wednesday morning meetings or Monday mornings?
I think it was Monday.
When Leroy,
he went off evaluating so you knew what you needed to do all week.
And we were like locked in that room.
Half a day. Then we go to Roscoe's and have lunch. And so before you know, the day was over. All we had done was talk. But that's because he got us thinking ahead. And so that we want to be reactionary.
Yes, he did.
We would be planning things. The why is very strong in program, and as well as program evaluation. A lot of times people won't evaluate the program. It becomes stale, and then it dies. And so, certainly one thing, your program should be tied to your mission of your organization. Because first you have your mission and what are your goals and objectives, and then you need programs to implement that mission. And then when you identify what those programs are, you need champions, leaders as staff and volunteers that are going to implement that program. Many times, we don't want to fund the staff. We don't want to fund the training. We want the program. Let's strengthen, say, our social media, and then we don't fund the talent it takes to train people to do the social media. So you have to budget and fund the program or have a source for that.
Yes.
And then you need to, how you market that is, I see profit and for-profit try to implement programs and they didn't do a market study. They don't know who their competition is. They don't know where they should be tailoring their expenses. And oftentimes they're not successful as a result. So you don't just start the program unless there's been data analysis and there is a strategy so that the likelihood is success, not failure. And then you have to be so open for evaluation It's hard. I still have a hard time. I think everything I do is great.
Yeah.
You have to be open and find more than one way to get feedback.
Right.
Some people write it. Some
Right.
people tell you to your face. Now social media will certainly give you feedback. But act on it. How many times do people not act? They get the feedback, and then they don't act on it,
Yeah.
and then they wonder why someone
Yeah.
else has come in and taken their market share.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, and grant funders even say that if you have not written in the evaluation process, then they say you don't even care about your program. That is a reflection of someone that either doesn't care about their program or doesn't want to do what it takes to change.
Right.
And so when people are writing their grant applications and the grant funder is asking, first of all, how do you know where you are at the beginning?
Mm-hmm.
And then whether it's 3 months in or 6 months in, how do you know that you've had some successes? If you haven't set in any kind of measurement steps, then your evaluation, as far as if you're saying you're evaluating, is going to be weak.
And I used to hate measurements in the beginning. In the early days before we built the Y, the Y kept asking for measurements. And then when I went to higher education, faculty didn't want measurements. You have to have some type of scale so that you can understand, not only for a funding source so you can get more money, but don't you want to know if you're really effective or not?
Yeah.
And in Southern California, when we have a litany of higher education institutions, there's graduate students, a lot of colleges who need students to do research and evaluation of programs. And so there's a low cost opportunity to have high quality evaluations in Southern California if you're open to it and you reach out to educational institutions to help you.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, Pete, again, I keep talking about the why because, again, that's where I met you, and that's what gave me my foundation for really going into nonprofit. You were there, 20 years?
20 years between the LAY, San Francisco Y, and YMCA of Orange County.
Yeah, and so then you went into the community colleges.
Right.
What was that transition like?
It was a little shocking to me because when I was with the Y is a standalone 501c3. And when I was running a foundation for a community college, you're a 501c3 that's inserted within this bigger bureaucracy of education called your district or your college. And they're oversaw by elected officials. And, elected officials have different motivations. Oftentimes it's to be reelected. Oftentimes in community college, the elected officials aren't necessarily, the assemblyman, senator statue of an elected official. So they micromanage.
Well,
and what happens is there tends to be in philanthropy a conflict of interest when you
I was
have
going to
the
say,
elected
isn't that a conflict
official.
of interest?
It is.
Yeah.
And the Y, they have conflict of interest policy. It took the IRS to finally force nonprofits to have.
I was just going to say, wait a minute.
Policy. But that's one of the things that's different. You might have, instead of being pure with your strategic plan, it might get filtered a little differently when you're a small 501c3 inserted into a bigger bureaucracy that has other objectives as its priority. And
were they a C6 or were they a C3, or do you know?
They were still a C3.
Really?
They were still a C3, but community college, is higher education. As Governor Brown talks about the cost. We just keep increasing the costs in higher education, and we're putting that on the backs of students. When I went to UC Santa Barbara, I received you're writing. Grants. I left debt-free. I didn't leave with a degree and $60,000 in debt before I started my career. And higher education kind of flip-flopped, and students are leaving today with having this burden of a debt already.
Oh,
and some of that, again, is literacy education. My parents, again, having an education, taught us about a checking account, taught us about interest rates. A lot of my peers weren't getting that kind of education.
Right.
And we have to teach economic literacy early on. When Southside was the precursor to Weingart, and it was just a house on 84th in Normandy, And there was, most
South
wise.
Side, you guys,
South Side.
used to be the Weingart YMCA. Prior to the Weingart YMCA, it was called South Side. And where was it, Pete?
On the corner of on the corner of 84th and Normandy. It's a little tiny house with a multi-purpose room. So people would call and say, hey, you have a jacuzzi? No. You have racquetball? No. What do you have? We got a multi-purpose room. You can do dance Tuesday from 6 to 7.
Yeah.
And so that's why we started doing outreach as a precursor to the full facility.
Yeah.
And it was quite, the steps that you had to take to go from a little home to a full facility. Again, that mentor, Leroy Titus, took us along the way. But it took an enormous amount of years to do that. And it's doing a great thing now. It's focusing on cardiovascular prevention.
And you guys
most of the
now,
community dies from cardiovascular disease, not gunshots.
Yes, and you guys, we're talking about the Weingart YMCA. It's at Century in Vermont. I still remember it's 9900 South Vermont. And that phone number, I'm just going to advertise it, is 754 3191, if I'm remembering right.
That sounds right.
754-3191. And this YMCA, even with the Rodney King riots, as they call it, we were at the YMCA. I think I was the director on duty that evening. And while LA was burning, and we're talking about ashes are on the cars at that YMCA there in the parking lot, I couldn't even get people to leave that Y. They felt so good about being there. And I walk into the men's locker room, and I'm telling them as I come in, all right, I'm coming in. You guys, you got to leave. Miss Herring, why should we leave? Ain't nobody going to bother the Y. It was such a steadfast in that community that if we got graffiti, it was very little, because whether it were the gang members or anyone else in that community, that's where they felt good. That's where, when they came in that Y, and you guys set this policy, they couldn't come in their colors. They couldn't come, they had to come in and leave that outside the door. And it's those young men that, as some of them even were friends of my son's, had it not been for that YMCA, they would probably be in jail, or many of them are no longer here if they stopped coming to the Y.
Right. That was a classic night. I was at the Lakers game.
Oh, yeah.
And very rarely do you get to go to the Lakers game.
Yeah.
And the friend I was with was connected to a security guard who came up to her and said, you need to leave because they're rioting. And you might as well leave early because they're blocking off the streets. And we're like, rioting? I'm like, I want to go see what's up at the Y.
Yeah.
By the time we got to the Y, there was that wall. There was this small wall going around.
Around it, yeah.
The kids were sitting on the wall all the way around, protecting the YMCA.
Protecting the YMCA.
I started crying.
Yes, yes. And Church's Chicken on the same corner was burning.
Yes.
And this is what I'm talking about, Pete. I've got chill bumps on my arm because I had a lot of lonely times when I moved here, and no family, no friends, but I was at that YMCA. When my mother died, it was you guys that took care of me. It was you guys with the board that raised dollars that sent me home for my mother's funeral. It was you were my brother, and still are. And the young people now, it makes me afraid. And I say this all the time, we're in a pandemic state. Where are the facilities and the men like yourselves and the other men that were at that YMCA, and those coaches that cared so much, and they were not being a coach because they were trying to get to young children, or they were not being there because of the dollar, they were being there because of the need. What are our young people going to have now?
Well, yeah, our culture, in particular the black male, there was a plan to destroy the black male as a leader in his neighborhood and community, and that plan worked, and so our young man, when you see the things that are going on today, certainly videos have given us some evidence of some of the things going on with black men today that we knew were going on before, but we didn't have the ability to prove it and show it. So meanwhile, a lot of our fathers who have done non-violent, low crimes have been sitting in jails for years and years, not having the ability to mentor their families,
right,
boys and girls. They just haven't been able to be there. That was designed on purpose so that the achievement gap would keep coming. And we just have to be more sophisticated as a people to avoid these pitfalls.
Yes.
Because when I've seen some of the interviews of our young men in prison, and when you get an opportunity to talk with them, they have had none of this mentoring.
None of it.
They get the mentoring once they're in the institution.
And that's why, Pete, I keep saying, Pete, they need to not only hear your voice, but just like we developed the nonprofit for Bootsy Collins, and I've said to Bootsy and his wife Patty, they need to hear his voice. They need to hear more about Magic Johnson and his voice. They need to hear, instead of seeing it just on television, they need to hear it. Now speaking of prison, Pete, and I don't know if you knew this, I used to work in the prison with the men in Chino. Mm-hmm. And for 2 or 3 years, I was working with men that were getting out, mm-hmm. whether it was within the next 3 months to 5 years. Mm-hmm. And so they were not ordered to take my class. It was an elective class. Okay. And so it was about 48 men. First of all, Pete, I got to tell you, I mean, I'm so glad that they took me through a program to, first, we had to go through a class showing that there's a no hostage policy. Mm-hmm. So if something goes down and they decide to take me hostage, there's no negotiation for Sherita.
Okay, all right.
But that's secondly, feeling, huh? I was not warned that the brothers in this class would be so fine, right?
Okay, yeah. You have a stereotype of they're gonna
I have a stereotype. But see, we're fed a stereotype, yes, right? Uh-huh. And these were brothers and so what I did is, well, first, when you go through the class, it also says no fraternizing and all that, because mm-hmm. there was just recently a guard, and she had gotten in trouble for giving a cell phone to a guard. Mm-hmm. I mean, to a guy in prison. Mm-hmm. Well, I can understand why. At first, I was like, a cell phone? Why would she do that? Mm-hmm. But you talk all that stuff until I got in that class and realized
that's all you need.
these are some brothers that. Yeah. And what I realized is I did a questionnaire, Pete, and I asked, and so I always showed the chaplain. I had to present to them what I was going to present in the class, and it was asking them, when was the first time you went to prison? How far did you go in school? When did your family members first start going to prison? Father, mm-hmm. mother, grandfather, uncle, brother, sister, all of that. Mm-hmm. And it was like 3 pages of questions, mm-hmm. just for them to answer honestly, right? Are you from a single-parent household, 2-parent household? Mm-hmm. Pete, I was shocked with the answers that I received. And not only at first the chaplain said, Sherita, they may not answer these questions. Not only did they answer the questions, they attached 2 and 3 sheets to it, mm-hmm. talking about their life. And the reason I had done this is I found this report called Welfare State to Prison State. Mm-hmm. And it was talking about from like 1967 to the early 70s, the president was getting ready to close prisons. And they said, no, don't close prisons. Cut community programs mm-hmm. and build more prisons mm-hmm. across the country. Mm-hmm. And Pete, within 3 to 4 years, not only were the prisons that were built filled, but the new prisons were starting to be filled. Yes. And so when I read that report, I developed that questionnaire. And the guys that were in my class, it was 48 or 49, but they were between the ages, after I get the questionnaires back, they were like 4 and 5 and 6 years old when the first person in their family, most of them started going to jail, which was their father or their uncle. Mm-hmm. That was around that 1967, 68 mm-hmm. through 72. And so the way because many of them came from a 2-parent household. Mm-hmm. Many of them, some of them had bachelor's degrees. Yes. Most of them, I would say out of the 48, more than 70% of them had graduated high school. So we're talking about a population of men that I had no idea really existed in the prisons. Mm-hmm. And so what I did is, after they filled out that questionnaire, I gave them that report. Now we're talking about grown men that are in prison that are, the tough of the tough, in tears. Mm-hmm. Because they're seeing, like you said, it was a design mm-hmm. for them to be there.
Yes, we fell for the okie doke,
yes,
more or less.
Yes, and so from that, Pete, do you know that after a couple of years working within there, we received a letter from the prison and connecting these guys to programs and services when they got out, what they specialized in, what their interests were, mm-hmm. all of that. Mm-hmm. We reduced that recidivism rate by 75%. Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying is, you have the power, Pete. I've seen you work. I've seen young men at that YMCA and how they felt about Mr. Bostic, even though they used to tease you about your little shorts. Remember those little shorts?
Shorts.
But all of them were wearing the short
In
shorts
those
then,
days,
right?
right.
But you were the only one of the executives. We were all executives at the Y. We all dressed it professionally.
Right,
You still wore your shorts and your T-shirt because
Right.
you always was up in the gym.
Exactly,
You know?
yes.
But the thing is that you're still that guy. And you still have that passion for people. You still see it as not a job, but a lifestyle.
Well, I'd like to share something very close to me, especially since you brought me back to my home. Because I walked to my elementary school in this neighborhood, the junior high, and of course went to LA High. Now, when I was at LA High, is where I had a teacher. Often it's a teacher. He was the advisor to the student clubs, who encouraged me to become involved in the service club, and I became president. That man was named
What's a service club?
Just, that was like being a Kiwanis at the high school level. So you did community service projects.
Okay.
And I was when I first started seeing organized community service. But that was 1972, and you weren't here yet, but in 72 is the year Robert Ballou was murdered at the Hollywood Palladium.
Wow.
And that was one of the most devastating murders in Los Angeles. And because it was a gang situation, but in those days the gangs pretty much didn't kill you.
Yeah.
We weren't killing
Yeah.
maybe you were really somebody if you had a knife.
Right.
And even though you might carry a gun, you didn't use a gun. You might just But when Robert Ballou got killed, things changed and things began to get violent and things got out of control. And Robert Ballou, what always disturbed me was he would have been president before Barack.
Wow.
That's how deep this guy was.
Okay.
And you get lost in, another black guy killed by another black guy. And what I felt is no one knows how brilliant this man was. And I want to share something, if you don't mind.
Oh, not
a
at all.
paragraph
Not at
that
all.
he wrote. Now, this man, again, he didn't get to graduate from high school because he was killed before that. So in 1972, you won't believe that what he wrote was in 1972. And through the welter of, we use words like that, right? Through the welter of change, development, and uncertainty, our mission as students, whether black, white, yellow, or brown, remain fixed, determined, and justified. It is, as I understand it, to assemble and combine the forces of good and to seek out and destroy the forces that endanger our society, no matter what form it appears to have taken this past century. These forces continue to stop and disfigure progress in the making. These forces deprive brothers and sisters like us of life. Yet, let all of my brothers and sisters everywhere, representing all walks of life, resist the forces of evil and let their voices ring out and defend all fronts, whether they be against power groups grown too arrogant, student government, or any type of government growing too corrupt by crime too rampant, morals set too low, or extremists too violent. Let us also see to it whether our personal liberties are as thorough and complete as they should be. So you see, we are the leaven. I had to look that word up. I thought it was a misspelling. That's what gets the formation of bread going. That's the word he's using. We are the leaven which binds together the entire fabric of our national system of education. We will be the ones at the very last roll call to debate the issues which divide men's minds. We must use this power effectively, or else we look towards the destruction of this hallowed tradition which has guarded us so dependently for over a century.
Now, Pete, how old was he?
He was had to be like 17. He was a junior at LA High and
How was he killed?
was defending his friend. People talk it was about a leather coat,
Wait, let's show that. He can show that on, let's see. Yeah, Robert
Ballou. He was a kind, as you can tell, intellectual. He put others before him, but he was a leader. And they snuffed out a leader. They didn't know he was a leader.
Wow.
He was just defending his friend. His friend had a leather coat, Maxie.
Yeah.
Maxie leather coat. And that's the day, Superfly and everything, Shaft. and somebody wanted his coat, and Robert went to defend his friend.
Yeah.
It didn't work out too well. They stomped him, kicked him to death. 5 people went to prison. Tukey was sent to death row and executed. But other men went to jail who probably shouldn't have gone to jail. But you know how law enforcement is. You there, you going.
Wow.
So not only did his life get snuffed out, who would have been a great leader, other men went to jail who probably didn't need to, and it changed the whole escalation of how we looked at one another as brothers. And that's what we snuffed out. Not a leader just of black men. He would have been a leader of the world.
The world, yes.
And people don't know that. It's just, this guy got killed.
Yes, yes.
And I decided, well, I'm going to spend my time trying to unite us, trying to strengthen us,
right.
mentoring your son. So that wasn't by accident to be in those opportunities to try to have an impact and keep brothers on the right path, because we really lost something.
Yes, yes. Well, Pete, again, one of the reasons why this is near and dear to my heart, we're seeing every day in the news that our young men are being shot. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't crime going on in our communities, but a lot of times crime and poverty and the feeling of hopelessness and all of that, crime goes along with that. And so one of the reasons why I stay so steadfast in working in community and working with individuals like yourself is we've got to bring more to those individuals. We've got to bring hope to those that feel hopeless. It's amazing that even when I got my niece out of foster care, and when I took her and enrolled her in school, she called me about an hour after I left the school, and she was laughing. She said, "Auntie, you wouldn't believe what there was a young man she knew when we walked in the room, in the office, and she said, he asked us, did we live in this community?" And that's when I moved home to take care of my dad. And she told him yes. And he said, your auntie doesn't look like she lives in this community. There's no way you're telling me she's an entrepreneur and she lives in this community. And I asked her, I said, "Vanessa, do you realize what he said to you?" And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "He doesn't feel like anything worth anything can come from this community. So why would he try and do better? Why wouldn't he get in gangs? So Pete, when you're dealing with the mentality that oftentimes, even in this day and age, there's young people that may not go within 5 to 10 miles on a regular basis from where they are. They're living in this bubble. You've got individuals that are from generations of low income and hearing that what you see on television, that's just on television. And until we can bring something else to them, how will we get something better from that?
Well, literacy education is still our answer. And the autobiography of Frederick Douglass, if you're going to read one book, if you're going to get, it's not very thick.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
That book is so powerful because when Frederick Douglass tells you what he was going through,
yeah,
and we know what he achieved. He should have been the first president. He should have been the first black president. Then, even though we have a lot of issues, we still have great opportunities that we should take advantage right now. And even though we know there's forces against us, the forces he was up against, if you read the vicious, we already know they never wanted to educate us. So, we forget that, I think. The plan was never to educate us. And when Frederick Douglass' second slave master, when the wife of the slave master was educating, she got busted educating Frederick Douglass. He told her in front of him why we don't educate the slaves. He tells her, and that's when he wanted to get educated more than ever. Once he realized, what are you deliberately? Because then we're gonna figure out. And it's been the plan all along. And I would say to any young man, start with that and put your perspective, put yourself in his shoes, look at what opportunity you might have, which is easier than what he had to do, and you can still blow society away, especially with the freedom of the internet and social media. There's
Right.
nothing stopping you.
Right.
And the creativity, we have always been entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. You know, we come up with the cotton gin because we don't want to work that hard.
Yeah, yeah.
We are entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And we still have that ability,
Yes.
problem solve. And so I think we can solve this, but we certainly need to get back, and you use the word a lot, to the sense of unity.
Yes.
There was unity when I was growing up in L.A. in those days. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the man who wrote Tiny Bubbles,
Yeah.
Jewish man, treated me like his son. When white flight happened, he didn't leave.
Yeah.
He stayed.
Yeah.
And then he said, well, Peter, one of the things you're supposed to learn is you live below your means, you know. And he wasn't afraid of nobody. He could have lived anywhere he wanted.
Right.
I'm still trying to get my wife to understand, live below your means. Like, what? You know, we don't teach that, and we do debt.
Pete, you've got to write a book.
Debt.
You've got to write a book. I know I
What's
keep
the new
saying
thing
this.
is out. Don't you want to watch? Don't you want one of them watches?
No, I don't. No, I don't. But, you know, Pete, you've got to write a book. There's so much to you. There's so much that you've been exposed to. There's so many people that have been your mentors. There's a reason why you continue to do what you do. So I'm going to keep pushing at you for that too, because there's definitely a book in you. Just the way that you track all this information, the stuff that you save is amazing to me. Oh, you've got to pull out that picture from the YMCA. You guys, the YMCA, at least during the years that we were there, and I think Weingart could not have been the only one, we sent hundreds of kids to camp for free or for like $15. And I'm going to put this on my Facebook for our kids to identify themselves. My boys are in this particular class also. But it is, you know, we just always sent all these kids to camp, you know, and this is every single year. And there were some of the roughest gang members.
It was black and white.
Yeah, there were some of the roughest gang members even that would go to these camps, and they had probably only heard, you know, like when rap music was starting to come out. But then by the end of the week, you know, at first they were fighting not wanting to go, and then by the end of the week they're crying because they don't want to leave, because now they're singing John Denver songs and Kumbaya and,
right,
you know.
Camp gave them an opportunity to get out of their immediate environment.
Yes.
And relax, look at bigger pictures, be challenged with different things. And camp probably changed life more than any other program, because we were able to change the environment, at least temporarily. I am at festivals and at community places, and folks will walk up to me and go, "Are you?" And they might call me Paul, or, you know, like, you were one of those YMCA guys.
They remember you, yes.
And I had one tell me, you know, you told me at camp. This gentleman says, "Peter, you told me at camp," because he liked to do poetry. You said I could write, and I didn't know I could write. And, you know, I ended up getting a degree in English in Cal State Long Beach, and here's my book.
Wow.
I was like, what?
Yeah.
And then I'm reading one of his poems.
Yeah.
And one of the things, it was talking about a gang shooting on the street, you know, you got the dead body, and you know what he says? He's talking about the blue and the red, and he said, but the sheet is always white.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So it was a wonderful experience being able to have a meaningful job at a time where you did get to impact the community. But, you know, what was deliberately put on the community then was crack.
Yes.
I had never seen anything turn us in the negative more than crack. Where young men would lie to their mother. I didn't take the TV.
TV taking the TV out of their own home. Yes.
And that was, you know, and then to add on the extra additional years if you were caught with crack as opposed to powder was deliberately designed to put black men in prison for a long time.
Wow.
And so. You know, we did have an opportunity to give alternatives. One of a gentleman who had been doing some things he wasn't proud of kept talking to him because, you know, what was the alternative? Minimum wage. And you know how low minimum wage is? You know, we still having a discussion about minimum wage.
Yeah,
and they were either, you know,
they're picking
make
today.
$1,000 a week or minimum wage.
Yeah.
You know, that's what we'd have to tell him. Well, one gentleman, he decided to do that. And I visited him not that long ago up north. He's a manager for Frito-Lay, owns his own house,
Yeah.
He only brings out the Lexus on Sunday.
Yeah.
And he said, Pete, if you guys, you and Leroy hadn't been offering him alternatives, he wouldn't have even been challenging himself to say, I can do it another way.
Right, right.
And that's what these young men know. You know, I was at Vaughn's. My minimum wage was $2.17.
Wow.
I was happy. That was a union.
Yeah.
That was union wages. You know, and it wasn't a lot of money, but hey, you know, I don't have to worry about my back.
Right.
You know, and that's what it's hard when you see some of the music is not encouraging. The music I grew up with, Motown, was saying love your relationship.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
your woman is should be uplifted, and you know, and the names were used were positive, loving names.
Yeah.
So you had that reinforcement as well, and I think that really helped as opposed to today. The reinforcement doesn't seem to be as strong on the relationship side.
Yeah. Well, you know, but the thing is that, Pete, part of that is because we were community. And everything has gotten so transitional now. No one stays where they were. And it's very hard for people to build that community and have what we had. Like it used to be, I know growing up, I couldn't be down the street. I couldn't even say punk, first of all. I couldn't be down on the corner and call somebody a punk. And not only did my neighbor, she might grab me, but by the time I got home, my mom knew about it too.
Right.
Where is that any longer? And so
you might get sued now. You know,
Yeah,
if you do
yeah.
something with another child, that parent, you know, my wife taught at Washington High many years while I was at the SWAT, and her mother was an educator, and whereas if I didn't go to school, my mother, I have to account for that.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't think I did miss school.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would go up to Washington and be in the attendance office to visit my wife, and parents would be justifying why their kid is not coming to school and shouldn't have any repercussions. And if the parent is not working with you, how are you supposed to get that kid in school and be consistent?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
But in my day, you got to be kidding. If you don't go to school.
Yeah. Yeah. Rock, I just gave you a note. If it's not possible, it's okay. I know I'm making a request at the last minute.
You know, you said something about, you know, my parents, and I gave props to my dad, the engineer, but I also want to give props to my mother.
Yes.
Because she was, when my parents did get divorced, she had to just run back into the workforce unprepared.
Uh-huh.
And so she had to start at a lower level without having finished her school, because she was going to do the Leave It to Beaver, be at home, raise us, you know, and she had to go back to work. But she went from City Hall as an administrative secretary, or just secretary in those days, to the Department of Water Power.
Mm-hmm.
And at the Department of Water and Power, she co-founded the Black Employees Association.
Wow.
My mother had me walk in precincts for John F. Kennedy when I was in elementary school. We were at the Ambassador Hotel when Robert Kennedy was assassinated. So my mother was a progressive activist, politically engaged,
Wow.
phenomenal woman in and of herself. And so I had, again, even though I never met my natural parents,
Uh-huh.
these Bostics, each one, made an impact on me and my sisters and the bigger society as a whole. So how could you do smaller things after having parents like that?
Right. Yeah, what could you do? And the thing is, Pete, I remember when you were, for the longest though, when I first met you, I did not know that you were adopted. And because I had a certain perceptive of what an adopted person would be, or kid, because I hadn't been exposed to that. I mean, except us getting our little sister. We got my little sister when I was like 12. You know, she was 6 months old. And so I didn't know what it would be like, except you hear about Cinderella, the step kid, and you hear about what foster's like. And so your head was on so level. And so I just didn't know. I didn't know. And then...
Yeah. And I was faking a lot of that, you know, because it still bothers me to this day. You know, you never know when it's going to affect you.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you ever saw the movie Elf.
Yes.
Okay, so Will Ferrell is Elf, and he starts off, he's a baby in a foster care something. So I take my daughter, it's Christmas time, to go see Elf, to have a good time.
Uh-huh.
At opening scene, I said, that's what it was like to be in a crib in a warehouse, because no parent is there and some agency is just there, and you don't know what these people are going to do.
Yeah.
So I start crying in the beginning of
In
Elf.
the beginning of Elf.
Because I wasn't ready for one of these stories, or you might see unsolved mystery,
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
find the thing. So, you know, it's sometimes, you know, your mother is a special person. Not that Pops isn't,
Yeah.
but being a sociologist through the years, not only, you know, the relationship with your mother, but even when your mother is carrying you, the state of your mother's health and well-being has a lot to do with the disposition of the child when it's
Yes,
born.
yes.
And if you're going through trauma because you're worried about the relationship and stuff, that starts off some trauma. And so, you know, I think I still have residue, but I've always chosen, and I think it's again because of the Bostic spirit, to look at the glass half full.
Yes.
Or actually, the glass is never empty.
Yes.
It's flowing.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? And,
You can never
and
have too
because
much
what
and-
good is looking at it the other way?
Right. What the other option just isn't as desirable.
Exactly.
You know, Pete, we're coming to the closing hour, and is there a number or a way that you'd like for people to reach you? And I want to put it out there, I'd love for you to come back, because there's so much for us to talk about today, and I do want us to talk more about, for these startup organizations, what are some of your suggestions for them raising dollars? How can they get grants? How can they go into project development? We can even use it as a training, because I've done even grant writing training on the air. So
I love grant writing training. You know how most people, they don't write for the grant that they're
Yeah.
willing to fund. That's the
Yeah.
first thing people go, yeah, we offer health care and you're writing for something else.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know, once you know the principles of grant writing, it can be real effective.
Right.
The best way to find me probably is through peter.bostic@gmail.com.
Okay.
And that way, that's my forever way to communicate with me, and so people can certainly find me that way.
Yeah.
Comprehensive Child Development is in Long Beach, but it also serves LA County as a whole. So peter@ccdlb.com, you can reach me there at Comprehensive Child Development.
Say that again.
peter@ccdlb.com.
Peter@CCD as in David, LB as in boy,
LB as in Long Beach.
SB as in Long Beach.
.com.
Okay, LB as in longbeach.com. Well, Pete, I want to thank you so much for being on. Before I go, I know that I just have a moment. They may or may not be able to hear this. There's a young man out of Compton, and he has this video, and it caught me because, tell me what song you hear in the background of this. And I don't know if they can hear this or not. I'm hoping they can. And, you know, he's in a club, and he's getting his hair braided, and it's kind of there's going to be a fight that breaks out. But there's a song that plays in the background, and it just caught me. And it totally turns from how it is right now to a positive note. And
We talking about peace. A piece of yours, a piece of mine. A piece of mine, one nation, under a group.
who is that?
This is a word. This is a word.
That song in the background, that's the Isleys.
Isleys, yeah.
But this guy, yes, this Kendrick Lamar, and he's saying, I love myself. He's out of Compton, and he's talking about I love myself. And the reason I wanted to play this and talk about it, and because, yes, we're having these shootings going on across the country, across the globe. But if we can start teaching our young people how to love themselves more, then the situations that exist that might even trigger some of the things that go on, no, they don't deserve to be shot down. But if we can start helping them to be loving themselves more, choosing different directions, being in more positive environments, then we can start curtailing a lot of this. Pete, I want to thank you so much for being on. I want to thank all of you for being with me this week. Join me next week here on Drive Time with Sherita J. Peter Bostic will be back.
All right,
because you've had too much of an influence on my life. We're also going to have Leroy Titus on. Maybe I'll have the both of you.
Excellent.
You guys, thank you so much for tuning in. This is Sherita J. out of Los Angeles, California. Come back and see me next week. We're going to have something really exciting for you. So have a wonderful, wonderful week. Go out and empower someone. Go out and let someone know that you believe in them. Again, I love you. Thank you for tuning in. See you next time.
Tribulation, but I know God. Satan wanna put me in a bow tie. Pray that the holy water don't go dry, yeah. As I look around me, so many motherfuckers wanna down me, but enemy gon' never drown me. In front of a dirty double mirror, they found me, and I love myself. The world is a ghetto, big guns and big inside. I love myself, but they can do what they want whenever they want. I don't mind. I love myself. You said I gotta get up, life is more than suicide. I love myself. One day at a time, sun gon' shine. Everybody looking at you crazy. What you gonna do? Lift up your head and keep moving. Or let the paranoia haunt you. Peace to fashion police, I wear my heart on my sleeve, let the runway start. You know the miserable do love company. What do you want from me and my scars? Everybody lack confidence. Everybody lack confidence. How many times my potential was anonymous? How many times the city making me promises? So I promise this. I love myself. The world is a ghetto, big guns and big inside.